All right, we're live. Hey, man. All right, so
Yeah.
this podcast,
Hey, man.
I think we decided we're gonna kind of riff off. I mean, basically, exactly as we recently came to realize we want to do more free floating things that we really just enjoy. And I
Yep.
think a topic in our minds right now is AI. Um, so you're
Technical
definitely still a
difficulties.
real human. Yeah.
That's true.
That's good to know. I'm not talking to an AI just yet. Um, I think the first
No.
question I have for you is how have you been using OpenAI? You've probably been using ChatGPT 4 now. How have you been going about it?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that indeed I agree. We were riffing last time, uh, brainstorming on what topic we could discuss next, and like because we do this in a monthly basis, a monthly sync. It's very interesting to see because things are developing fast. What we have been working on in the past month. And of course, I don't think it's a big surprise that for us that also have been AI, it has completely entered my workflow, revolutionized. I'm not sure if I want to say that yet, but like it's definitely has entered my workflow and also how I operate with my team in many ways. And I know that you are already for a long time working with AI. You I think shared with me once a few years back that you wanted to start an AI startup one day. So I know that you are really into this topic. Um, so yeah, I thought it would be a very good opportunity for us to discuss a little bit what AI means for your workflow in terms of second braining, in terms of personal knowledge management, and also in terms of just your entire workflow and the management of your teams. And of course, because you are a coder, also perhaps if it's makes your life way easier in many regards. So that's basically how I want to get into it. I have been using AI now for I think 3 months, and the last 2 months really extensively in my own setup. And I think, man, I see so many ads and so many use cases on Twitter and on Reddit and in Discord for AI. I haven't just scratched the surface of what's possible, but I've been mainly using indeed ChatGPT, Midjourney, some other secondary AIs like Quillbot for copywriting, those kind of things. So yeah, I think it's cool to dive a bit into that this podcast.
Nice, cool. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to me wanting to set up a company, it's definitely a direction that I'm interested in going into. I think it's the real end goal that I have long term is to look into telepathy, which artificial intelligence will probably be a part of, or like kind of a necessity, because there's kind of a prerequisite of some human understanding, at least, or human level understanding with machines. Um, but yeah, it's been developing really fast, and on my side, when it comes to usage, I've been primarily using it or experimenting a little bit with coding, so certain tasks that I really don't enjoy doing that I did end up doing a lot for other people because I think no one really enjoys them, which is infrastructure. Um, and I've been using that or ChatGPT rather to generate infrastructure code. It's been going okay. There's definitely some mistakes. I haven't been using ChatGPT 4 as extensively to do just that, simply because it's out came out so recently, and I hadn't I hadn't done any work in it recently, but I have experimented with it a little bit, and it's quite interesting to see what I'm trying now. Is effectively when you work in building software, you have a code base, and that's just a folder with some files, and those have relationships between them, and it's supposed to function in a particular way. You're building a service or a web platform or whatever. And what I was really interested in is what if I feed the whole project to ChatGPT and I ask it to do things with me within the project. So what I ended up doing is I wrote some code that looks at a particular service, and it because the problem is with ChatGPT you can only communicate to it with text, right? So I can't like install ChatGPT on my computer and say do this thing with this folder or whatever. So I need to make it understand what I have on my file system on my disk. So what I did is I looked at my folder and I made a small script that puts it into text. So it just describes to
Mm.
ChatGPT what is in my folder and then every particular file in in the folder, so that ChatGPT understands what my code base looks like in that moment, and then I can ask it to do stuff. Um, and so far, so good. I would like to see if I can automate my own work with that. So basically, automate myself away, which is fun. I think there's a lot of fear as well. Yeah, look, I'm not a full time coder, right? But I think for full time coders that really
Mm.
not do nothing else, I think yeah, I'm definitely noticing it's like either you jump on board and you go heavy on AI right now because you know it's going to replace you, and there's others that seem to either ignore it or be a little bit afraid, which does make sense because there's some big questions to ask. So I think I'm able to replace a large part of what I've been doing the last years with ChatGPT quite soon, which I think is great news. But
Okay.
I don't know about you. Like, have you been able? Do you
And
think
what
you?
do you mean with
Sorry.
yeah? What do you mean with infrastructure? Like, sorry to interrupt, but like you say, I build the infrastructure.
Right. So when when you build software, you have to run it on a server.
Yeah.
But when you build software at scale, or you want to make it useful, you want to make it moderately smart and just scalable, then you will have to build proper infrastructure for that, and that means several servers, the way those servers talk to each other, the way you don't want to replace them all the time. They have to be scalable. When you have a lot of traffic, then you have to be able to increase their size, etc. And there's a lot of ways in which you can make this easier. However, the thing you make easier is the scaling, but to do that, the initial complexity is actually higher. So you'll have to invest more time in writing and preparing everything, basically. And I hate that work, but it's
Mm.
important. So I'm trying to automate that part away because I just looked. Basically, what I did, also because I'm now looking, I'm in a nice vacuum in my life. I'm looking into new startups and new companies that I would like to set up. So I took a hard look at my own experience, and I'm like, what are real frustrating problems that I have, that I just want to get rid of? And this popped up as one of them. So that's the first thing I'm going to try and use GPT for. So yeah, we'll see.
Building infrastructures. Yeah, that's a common problem in humanity, I think.
Yep.
But okay, no, I get that. Yeah, so especially the part that you said. Okay, a lot of your peers, they feel that they will be automated away, or they will just completely be obliterated by the AI. I see the same. So I don't have a software background. I more have a marketing background, and I see a lot of copywriting. Copywriters, they are just like on yeah, in permanent state of stress right now because they are basically, especially when it comes to copywriting, a big chunk of them is not needed anymore, and I have been using it a lot for copywriting, and I'm absolutely mind blown by the quality of copywriting that is possible to attain with just only ChatGPT. And you can of course use some secondary AIs on there, like I said in the intro. But just with ChatGPT, you can. It's really this is a revolution, I would say, just in terms of the leap that we've made in quality there. So I think that's extremely interesting. I don't think that people will be. I'm not sure if you hinted on that or to that people will be not needed anymore. I think this is just a mindset switch. So I saw some comment somewhere or tweet that man is basically becoming more of an orchestrator. Like you get now the tools, but you have to still like get the whole symphony into place. You have to build the whole symphony, and the AI is just part of that. So you will be served the perfect tools for you to create code or to write copy or to create music even, but you will still be in charge of like orchestrating the entire thing. And personally, I love that concept because I think that is basically what we're always doing. We're more orchestrating workflows, teams, that's basically our default position. But I do understand that a lot of people that don't have that mentality, or that personality type, or whatever you want to call it, that are drawn toward that specific mode of being, that those feel okay. I am really now getting redundant in a basic sense, because a lot of like computational work can now be done with or by AI. And yeah, that's fascinating. I see. I'm not sure. So you also, even in the coding world, see that.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, I agree that I don't think humans will be easily replaced just yet, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that I imagine. I think it's easy to like a lot of the work, especially in our case, is online work, right? It's IT work. So a large part of our existence is defined just intuitively within that context. And I think, I mean, most of the replacing will obviously happen in the digital world. Um, but the thing is, like what I notice now, and even if we continue with LLMs, the large language models that like ChatGPT and
Well,
others,
yeah.
yeah. So um, they are still they're forced to generalize really heavily. You know, we can ask them questions and we can have conversations with them, but fundamentally, the only thing we can do is communicate them with them about um, information that we can somehow put into text, right? But the problem here, and that's also where I think really the crux is, they are only language models. I think if you really want to replace humans, um, at the very least, you'll need the same input streams. It's kind of, you know, computer has a certain input streams, and we have visual, we have tactile, etc. You know, and that is actually incredibly important
Mm.
information to do any cognitive work that we do that has a direct influence on the physical world. So I think a large part of our thinking and communicating that we do, that we have already delegated to the internet, will be heavily optimized and somehow, you know, delegated to AI. So yeah, it will be a huge shift in workforce, and unfortunately, a lot of the people that have banked a lot. It was actually interesting. I was talking to for my work, I work with a VA, virtual assistant sometimes. It makes things a lot easier and more productive. And we were talking about her role, and I think she made a smart remark. You know, I'm very hesitant specializing in anything right now in the digital world as a remote worker, simply because I'm absolutely certain that in 3 to 5 years, chances are that everything that I do now will be automated away. So I'd rather orient myself very broadly to just figure out whatever I will still be useful for in the future. I think that's a very smart way to go about it. And I think the people that have specialized really heavily in purely digital work um, are probably forced
Mm.
more than others to suddenly generalize. It is the age of generalists. Seems like a lot more. So yeah,
Yeah, I thought just now that this really ties into a discussion we had, I think, 2 years ago about being a generalist versus being a specialist. And it seems that we're, in this regard, we were a little bit on the right end, although I'm still not sure completely there. Maybe it just depends on choosing the right specialization. That still seems to be the way to success. There are a few things in there that like I want to touch on. So first of all, you say like, okay, replacing humans. What do you mean by that? I think that's good to address first.
right. So I mean, I think there's a couple of sci-fi books written already about like, you know, situations in which humans either destroy themselves because they become obsolete or because they get into this state of you know, infinite resources, almost at least, you know, infinite prosperity, say. And then obviously the question is, well, if there is prosperity without sacrifice, is it still prosperous? You know, is that actually still, you know, because obviously if we look at human existence, it's quite important. Also, even our the way our body literally works is that we have adaptations to demands. But if there's no demands because we're not required to do any particularly difficult thing anymore, then the question becomes, well, will we still will we still survive? Will we still exist? Will we, and even more importantly, will we still experience meaning? So I think that when I say replacing humans, I mean um, basically increase our productivity to the point that we become effectively useless or largely useless, by which, and I think as a second order consequence, we'll end up destroying
Mm.
ourselves because there's no use for us anymore. And I do think what you see in nature, rightfully so, is anything that is not useful to a particular objective will eventually cease to exist because it's not stimulated.
Okay, so basically you're saying suffering is a requirement for the human condition, and with AI we basically outsource our capacity to suffer, and therefore we will not be needed anymore because we will not grow because there is no pain incentive.
Yeah, I mean, I think work. I think I would replace suffering with work because sometimes we describe a lot of things as suffering, and sometimes we find our work joyful, and I think it's still this to the same end, right? We have to exert ourselves to do something. Sometimes it feels like exertion and suffering, and sometimes it doesn't, but it's still the same thing, and we keep delegating that to machines, which is
Mm.
great. But the question then, obviously, in a lot of people's mind is, well, what is left to do for us? And I think it's going to be a long time before that ever gets completely replaced by machines, if we ever will let them replace us. But it's certainly an
Yeah.
interesting thought to sit with a little bit. It is one of the important questions, I guess, that's going on in a lot of people's minds, singularity kind of level stuff.
Yeah, there's so many things here we can talk about. But just first, I want to stick with this replacing humans because I've been thinking about this too, and it's kind of funny that I had in my mind, like until last year, summer, somewhere around that period, that the high level jobs, they were safe. The creative jobs, they were safe. The copywriting, the artists, the coders. That was kind of the general sense. I am not in the AI community, but I'm following a lot of their podcast and reading. So I think that was kind of the general gist of it that I got from it, and that basically the physical easy labor, because it's very easy to compute that. Let's say truck drivers, it's just from going from A to B. Those guys, then you're fucked. But now it seems that it's completely flipped because for some reason it makes of course sense if you think about it. It's harder to translate the computation into reality because then a physical component is added. But with purely digital work, you don't have that. So it's fascinating to see that for now the artists, the really the high end, the guys that make this kind of shit behind me, you know, these are now basically obliterated, while the truck drivers are still needed much more than ever. So I'm like, wow, this was for me, I think, one of the biggest, yeah, things I did not anticipate it from a technological perspective in last year and also this year. I'm just completely blown away by that. So, like continuing with that, like I have been using ChatGPT and AI now for a while, and the way like most like expert now on YouTube and wherever they tell you how to use it is to really approach it as a team member. So you really have to address it like a human, and you have to like add it to your Slack channels and say to the rest of the team members, this is another team member. And it's almost already like impossible to distinguish in that setting, so in the digital setting, from general humans, from real humans. It's almost impossible. So in that sense, I think because I'm working remotely, I think you're working remotely. We're almost there already at the place of replacing humans in the digital environment.
I'm not sure. I mean, so I was trying to figure out while chatting with ChatGPT using GPT-4, um, whether it's capable of making decisions. And they've done a I'm not an expert in trying to like because also important to mention GPT-4 and ChatGPT is red teamed. So when they bring out a new version, they red team it, which is basically getting people to try and fuck it up, um, which is very common in software world. You always try to red team your whatever you produce, and it seems like they did a really good job at making it not do anything close to making decisions or having preferences. Anything that obviously is a human thing, right? To have a preference, and obviously the the an, an AI having a preference is a danger is potentially a dangerous thing, because obviously
Mm.
with preferences come trade-offs, and when you have to make trade-offs, that's where the whole ethical debate starts. Because what trade-off are you supposed to make? There's a lot of important questions there. Um, but I think so. What effectively we seem to be doing is we're making ourselves a lot more productive by outsourcing the organization of electrons effectively. So we have the whole internet and all this digital stuff runs on energy, right? It's electricity, and everything that is built in that area, we are now kind of making more efficient and reorganizing. But that's also AI, and a lot of digital work is completely constrained, purely in the digital realm, is completely constrained only by that. Whereas in the real world, we have atoms. It's not just bits. We have a lot of actual matter, and that's going to be a lot more difficult because the the AI that we're building by no means can optimize against physical constraints because it doesn't even know those constraints. The only thing it can optimize against is information because that's the only realm it lives in. And then on top of that, it cannot make decisions because so I think we're optimizing because we have to communicate perhaps less. There's less information for us to process because we can delegate it to something else that can do all the digital information processing. But when it comes to decisions or organizing atoms, I think those are two very important things that will take a long time for before we allow AI effectively or are capable of allowing AI to do that. So I don't think you and me, for example, we have to make a lot of decisions, right? About where we put our resources,
Mm.
who you hire, who you fire, etc. And I think a lot of those things are still very much rooted. Those decisions are very much rooted in things that are not purely digital, like a vision. And I think anything that is close to what is really required for making optimal decisions will take a while before we let AI do that. Simply because answering a question with yes or no or other like information is pretty easy, but a decision, as you can imagine, is if you make an important decision in your life, it's actually an incredibly complex structure of your needs, your preferences, your constraints, your time horizon, your goals, values, all this information you've been able to accumulate over time. And I think it will take a long time before we can let AI do those things for us in a way that is in line with how we want to make decisions. And on top of that, before we will allow it to do so, because I think that's where the ethical debate really becomes problematic. Also, when it comes to liability and the legal sense, I think we'll have regulators making issues out of that specifically, because there's always already questions, right? About okay, well, in the trading world, it's already a big question.
Mm.
So if you now run an AI bot that trades, and people and you basically allow consumers to use it as well, and you're the producer of this model, um, who is liable? Because the outcome of those decisions, they're not engineered by humans at all, because it's we already know that it's a model. But is it then the people that build it? If the people that built it are liable, that has is very strange because you're not the one making the decision. So I think that will take a while uh, to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I agree with that. I think I was hinting more on you said okay, replacing humans. I think the first step of that we can already see. So like the just the digital remote workers in a way. Like let's say not my core team members that that I have meetings with. That's still not doable. But like I do work with freelancers. That just a few hours a week that do some illustrator design or some copywriting, and I just have contact with them through Slack, and I just set the assignment and they deliver it, right? But that already is almost indistinguishable now with working with an AI with them as with a real human. That's what I'm trying to say. So if we're already with the first almost the public version of AI, it's already at this level, then I cannot like imagine like where the version V5 or V10 will be, in like a few years, if that's already capable now. So I agree with your the decision making argument. I think that is really like for a very specific part of people that will have that mindset or that responsibilities. But I'm very curious to see where this will go. And you mentioned there also the singularity. Like we can go a little bit into what the singularity is, but for me already this is maybe the beginning of the singularity because you're in it right now. How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think generally, I mean, it's hard to make any predictions about this, right? Because that's obviously what everyone would like,
Oh yeah,
what
I'm
I
not
would
gonna do
also
that.
like.
Yeah.
But I do think that these developments are very discontinuous. So uh, it's hard to predict where until what point things are somewhat continuous. So now, for example, we've seen a somewhat say so some people might argue exponential improvement in GPT and also other models coming up. I mean, we've seen the same with generative AI, I think. Um, but it's really hard. We had an AI winter, um, I'm not saying that we will get another one, but it's a nice indication of how discontinuous innovation is, especially these kind of things. So it's hard to say at what point we will hit kind of a blocker because we simply are not far enough yet. So I'm it's if we really extrapolate how fast we've been going right now, and we just assume for a moment that we will not hit any really big showstoppers, then yeah, it becomes very interesting, and things like singularity become yeah, problematically close perhaps. But I think it's going to be pretty discontinuous. That's what my hunch is, simply because from first principles, that's generally always what happens. Which is good, because it should give us a small break to try and figure out what the hell we want to do with this, and allows us to catch up, right? Because it's absolutely insane. Like, we're pretty fast in like adapting. I think the two of us as well, because we work so closely in this digital world, and we're talking about this a lot. So we don't need a lot of time to adapt to the fact that it's here. We're using it in our work already, but I mean, we have to also understand that it's literally been a few months. So the level of
Yeah.
adaptation that we can get structurally is very, very little. um so yeah, I don't know if that's the answer you were hoping for, because I don't think we're going to see in productivity increase, but nothing crazy like singularity level events.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with the discontinuity argument. You're totally right that we are always pretty early with adopting new technology, but my I think what is feels different for me, like this is the first time that I, in my sense, in my memory, experienced directly such a enormous shift of productive power. I think you can maybe the early days of the internet were perhaps a little bit like similar, but of course I was too young to experience that. And what I see now is that this is such a shift, a relocation of energy in a sense, that the ones that master this now, or the ones that are now implementing this early, they will have such an immense, like immense advantage over other productive systems in a way, because the output capacity of AI that I've seen so far is yeah, I have to say it's quite yeah, it's just quite shocking to me.
Yeah, it's actually, I have a question, because I don't produce
Mm.
content, right? I mean, we do now, but I don't write
Hmm.
anything. And a colleague and friend of mine mentioned that he was playing around with generating articles using GPT-4, and he said it's definitely gotten miles better than 3.5, but it's soulless. Do you agree?
Ah, it's solid. I'm not sure if I agree with that. It it can be soulless, yes. Okay, so let's just why I say this, because I work with a team of copywriters that they write marketing emails, they write blogs, product page, a lot of stuff for e-commerce sites. And what I have just witnessed right now in the last 2 months, when I have trained my team that okay, you can use these tools in these specific manners, they they have been times five with outputs like within a month. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? So I'm just thinking like, okay, that is just for me, just to witness that firsthand. It's it's mind-boggling to see like, okay, this can happen in such a short time in one specific industry, and I can imagine the same in the art industry, right? With all these mid-journey tools, all these AIs. So I'm trying to hint at okay, how can and of course I hear your stories about coding as well. So these are all very niche creative industries, and I'm thinking okay, in what sense can this be extrapolated to other niches that perhaps are more broad, are more general, right? And to answer your question, okay, is it soulless? It can be soulless, yes, but I think that's also just how you use it. Like I have seen out like content created with ChatGPT, and it's indistinguishable from whatever my best copywriters would write. It's yeah, it's on that level.
Wow. Okay, I see. So it's really about the prompting. If you become skilled enough at
Yeah, it's,
prompting it.
that yeah. That's it. I think that's it. Like, I think I've spent hours, just learning how to prompt in the right way. I think that's where the power is. That's where the most leverage is. I even think I saw like prompt engineers. Is this a new job that existed now? Like, it's really about. I'm not sure if this existed before. Maybe you know more about that. But it's prompt engineers. I'm like, wow, okay, this is interesting. It also creates new areas, and I think that's where the most leverage lies, because the best prompters will have like exponentially more output.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think a friend of ours made a nice the, the best prompters will inherit the earth. Uh, is one
Yeah,
of the, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's where we are right now. I feel, but I'm not sure if like this is just the momentum, the time in the moment where I'm right now, or like, I feel that I'm a bit more involved, perhaps emotionally than you. You are a bit more distant and say, okay, things go up and down, and evolution that doesn't go continuously. There will be a drop down. There will be like a moment of rest again. Like I hope so. I think maybe too, but I'm sure where that moment of rest will lie. Will it be way further ahead than where we are now or not?
yeah. That's true. I mean, in a certain way, I guess we're not dealing with a general singularity, as in the impacts on human civilization are like uh, are absolute, But we're definitely, I guess, in a way, you are right. We are dealing with a somewhat potentially constrained or isolated singularity level thing. It is if you see the impact and like second, third order consequences, the ripple effects it has that are or waves rather. That is kind of singularity level because the reorganization we're already doing around this is quite huge. Um, Also, a big question, obviously, is how that will. Because I was thinking about this recently. I wonder how you think about this, actually. So, so let's assume that we are able. Let's start with this. Actually, do you know WorldCoin? Have you heard of that?
No, WorldCoin. No.
It's very interesting. So, it's been around for a while. I think I learned about it quite early on, more than a year ago at least. And effectively, what they're trying to do is uh, it's kind of self-sovereign identity. So to put identity on the blockchain, right? So and it's quite difficult to verify someone's identity. We now have passports, obviously. Now that there's the whole point of like the whole thing of the network state. So maybe some people have like alternative identities and such, but still a big problem is like how do you make sure that you could actually verify someone's identity without using the current like KYC system. So what they developed is was something they call the orb. You can also now do it through your app, through an app actually, where you can make a picture. They use retina scan to identify you, and then that's purely on chain and also privacy preserving. And they are decentralizing more and more, and that's their aim. Now, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, is actually involved with that project as well. I don't think he's the founder, but he's definitely involved. And this is actually something I realized recently, but it made me realize as well, like, well, let's assume that that works. WorldCoin, everyone's identity can be on chain. And then if we also in this thought experiment include the idea of AI on chain, so because right now it's OpenAI that runs this. Luckily, they're kind of developing a product in public, so you do see quite soon what they develop, and they're okay with it having issues, which is great because I think as Sam Altman himself also said, um, when the potential consequences are not that far-reaching, which is right now because it's not we're not at that level of integration yet. It's actually good to already start making some mistakes because the impact is still relatively low. So we're early. However, so if you imagine that it's not OpenAI, so a private company that runs this where you don't really know what they're doing, but we're actually able to put the computation itself, so the model itself, basically ChatGPT, on the blockchain. um, I think it will be quite interesting. I think AI will actually potentially, if we go this way, will be a huge benefit, simply because we're creating computational intelligence, and we have also already in kind of in parallel to that been working on decentralized computation. So potentially, if we can compete with companies like OpenAI using decentralized computation, then you can generally create a model that is on the one hand potentially uncontrollable because that's a scary thing. It's definitely the singularity level thing when you have because the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's unstoppable, right? So and blockchains. Now you can pause smart
Yeah.
contracts, so that's nice. Maybe we should include a pause function. That's a whole different set of things we should talk about. But imagine you have ChatGPT running on the blockchain and you have perfect identity verification that is also completely decentralized. I think that will put us in a very interesting position where the reorganization of human effort and also of human resources will probably be the most far-reaching we can get to right now. Because the thing with these models that are still owned by companies, that you'll see competition in between them, right? But it's competition, profit-driven competition, so to say. Whereas I think we can reach a more interesting uh, situation if the competition or the basis of competition is rather uh, defined by a feedback loop that is actually humans themselves. And that is only something you can do if you make it completely open. The model itself should be completely open in terms of its development and run on chain. But that also includes a lot of risks because it can also go wrong. But in that case, the cool thing is we still run the infrastructure that runs the model, right? So miners or validators on these chains can hurry away and go to other blockchains. And I think this model would actually be really great because I think it's important for the future of humanity to develop this as much in the public as we can, because it will also make it possible to actually. So ideally, you'll have governments implementing AI to optimize the way that we do everything in terms of government taxation, currencies, uh, planning. I don't know if foreign affairs is the best idea, but the cool thing is all that resource management that governments now do with AI, we can actually we can I think we can delegate a lot of what governments now do in terms of resource organization to AI running on chain, because then you'll have intelligence integrated with currency and resource distribution, not managed by a group of humans anymore. So that's something I think would be quite nice to experiment with. Um, I wonder if you have any, like, what are your first thoughts when you hear this?
A lot of thoughts, a lot to unpack as well. I think the beginning argument that was already interesting. You said, proof of identity, right, on chain with AI. Like, this is something I have been thinking about, like, in the past month, more deeply, in the sense that, okay, what we see now with AI is that it has the capacity to create almost anything already that humans are able from an artistic perspective. Like, not yet at that level, but I think that will be done. Like, even music, for example, it's computation. And if you see now that art is already being done, and Google has their own music AI that creates like beats, it doesn't sound there yet. It's not there yet, but this is just easy to imagine that it will get to a certain point. You just feed it all the music history in the world, and you say, like, create something similar, right? I think that's not impossible to fathom. Now, that made me think about the next step of that. Will we as humans appreciate that or no? Like, will we appreciate, like, let's say Mozart, but then created by AI, the best classical musical piece ever, but we know it's computation by AI? Will we then still appreciate it? And first I was like, no. Then I thought, like, yeah, of course, it's about the quality of the pure experience. Of course we'll appreciate it. And then I was like, okay, but there is also perhaps a human element in there that what makes us appreciate it. And then I thought of an idea. Okay, we need some proof of human ID, and I think I saw this in the network state later as well. This concept that at one point we will get to a certain level or point in time that we have to prove that things, our creations, are manifested by actual humans. So you want to, there will be a need for that. I think. I'm not sure if that is a right prediction. Like, I think now that we as humans, we have that inner deep need to connect with other humans, and when we read the work of another human, or we see the art of another human, then we feel a deep connection to the soul of that human, in a sense. Or is that not needed? Can we just create anything, and then we are drawn to that? So this is something I'm really struggling with. Like, this really, like, put me, like, yeah, I've been having nights that I was awake thinking about this, like, where would the future go? Is this still needed? Are we as humans, in that sense, from the artistic sense, always, what we we think is the deepest essence of being human is creating art. But if that is already like being capable to outsource to non-human entities, like what is there still left, right? So just to start with this, how do you think of that concept, the proof of human concept?
Yeah, I think it's important. I wonder how. I wonder. I haven't thought about this a lot specifically. I mean, I've thought about things, I guess, in proximity to this, but not specifically this. But it sounds really interesting. It's definitely something to consider. I wonder how much of this proof of human is premised on the fact that we are still the most powerful, quote unquote, powerful organism. So So if we assume that we maintain power as we do now, then I think proof of human will continue to have value, right? Because I think a really important part for humans is kind of perceived cost of production. So that's why I think originally created, like the Beatles, humanly created music, purely human, I guess,
Yeah.
in a way, or humanly created art. Actually, is something I'm looking into as well as an investment thing, but I think that will increase in value simply because the perceived cost of production is so high, especially because we're now seeing that the cost of production of anything digital is going down really fast. Content, art, everything digital, cost of production. I mean, the fact that I got paid as an engineer quite well is because the cost of production of software was quite high. That cost of production is now decreasing
Yeah.
really fast. So, so yeah, I think in that sense, because we think the cost of production uh, of something that humans did manually is higher because we value it more. I think proof of humanity will be very important, but I also wonder, well, perhaps it will only be important as long um, as long as we decide what is valuable, and then that's also a very philosophical question because what is valuable in life, I think, what makes life very valuable is emotions, and it's art, and it is something a lot deeper. I guess it's a very spiritual kind of mystical way to put it, but I think there's sincere beauty in the randomness and the artistic part of human civilization, and it seems like that might be something we'll compete on with AI a little bit. We'll say, well, what we create is more real or more human. We value it more. I guess as long as AI is not there to disagree with us, we're fine. The moment it actually becomes autonomous, maybe that will change because it could disagree.
Yeah. Just like a small meta comment, like I love that how we started with what's your workflow, and we're already, what, half an hour or something in 40 minutes in, and it's getting like philosophical, what is consciousness almost level. I like that. We can definitely go there, so that we have no constraints on this podcast, so that's fine. Yeah, to hook into that, like I like your perspective, and like I agree, but like in the first part of your, like, I think your argument, you make the point, okay, as an investment case, it's like what we give value, right? So it's like what I'm aiming for more. I'm not sure if you also are in that level thinking here, is like, okay, what makes us human, right? Like it's often we think it's the capacity for artistic production, for art, or for the deepest essence of of being a human, right? We think of Mozart, like I said, like just extremely like high level musical masterpiece, something like that. That's the essence of humanity. And like I said, I don't think it's at all like weird now to think that this will not happen in the next few years, that AI will be able to produce this. So what is there then still left that makes us human? Well, does not like create a extreme depression in just the collective human psyche in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get where you're going with this. Yeah, I was recently thinking about something similar to this. I think if we're not useful anymore, and that's also like, well, we will remain we will remain useful to each other. And I think that's what something we honestly. I was recently reflecting on this. I think we could do a better job as humanity to be useful for each other. I think we've been doing a lot of work to organize resources, right? And to be productive.
Mm.
And we're definitely, it seems like, on a peak of prioritizing individualism and being and productivity, etc. It's something that we also, individually, you and me, really try to work on to be productive. But I think, if you look at history, before we had so much technology, we we played a bigger role in trying to be useful for each other. I think sometimes, and I think, when I look around, and I think, the amount of loneliness that we see, it's quite sad. And we could do a better job of being useful for each other. And hopefully, one of the positive potential side effects of this is that our humanity will be more defined not by the things that we build and create per se, but by how they instill a certain human experience, a social one at that, um, a more deeply meaningful one. And I think I do wonder, because we also know that there's a lot of people that live purely online, and I do fear, and this is something I do question a lot, is what will happen to kids, because a lot of kids are now living a lot in the digital world. I was talking with a family member recently, and I don't know, she wasn't really complaining, but she was mentioning how her kid doesn't hang around physically with kids as much anymore. They just chat. And obviously, I think we came from the age where I would just go play outside, and I would call someone and let's meet at that particular spot at that time, and that would be it, and we would meet there and play out. Well, I'm a little bit worried that they don't get trained and conditioned as much in the value of playing physically, and therefore in experiencing the beauty of how we can be valuable for each other, because they just get value from digital representations of people, and AI can replace digital representations of people. So that I'm worried about. So I think we might reach that point that you mentioned, if we don't watch it, that we will feel very useless, and then we start to question our humanity. But I hope that a lot of us, uh, maybe eventually all of us, will see that we can reorganize our lives to be more productive, and therefore we don't have to focus as much on those things, because AI will help us in that area, and that we become more human again, and that we value the human interactions more, and that we can
Mm.
organize life that way. One thing to add, I was thinking in context of this, is I'm reading something from Karl Popper. It's a very interesting kind of
Mm.
philosopher, and it seems like he distinguishes um, everything in three worlds. One is the physical one, um, and uh, then there's the second one, which is kind of is a consciousness, and then is the third one is that what is created by consciousness. So kind of knowledge. It's pretty abstract, but actually, I think what I realized is, well, yeah, we have consciousness, and there's a lot of models, right? There's also people that say, well, actually, no, the physical is actually everything is consciousness, and it's just a consequence of consciousness that is already there. And but yeah, let's not go even further.
Yeah, I'm at that
Um,
camp.
yeah, I know. Yeah, Hoffman. Um, so. But it made sense to me, like, it seems like if you put it on like phases of development, we have the pretty physical, then from that came consciousness, and then from that came knowledge. And it seems like what we're doing is we're creating new emergence in the field of knowledge, right? um, but now what it seems like is in, we've created intelligence, an emergent property that lives purely in the realm of consciousness. Sorry, in the realm of knowledge, in just the abstract, in the realm of information. So we
Yes.
we've so consciousness our consciousness is kind of is on this edge of kind of the physical and kind of somehow the metaphysical, like what we also always question, like, well, is there more than just a physical consciousness, but but regardless of whether that's the case, we do create knowledge. We create something that seems to live outside of our consciousness itself, simply because there's these bodies of knowledge that we've created that are interpretable, like books and etc. And they live on. They live further than our consciousness, because they can reinterpret it. But fundamentally,
You mean meta consciousness with consciousness, right? So ego consciousness.
what is that?
Just to
Metaconsciousness?
clarify. So your personal conscious experience of like I am Niels and you are Zoe, and the subjective experience that I have, the ego experience that I have, that is like that's what you use as consciousness. So if you
Oh
say
yes.
like my work, my book transcends myself, my own ego, then it's beyond my meta consciousness, right?
Uh, yes. Yeah. So when I say consciousness, I mean
Okay.
I mean I mean indeed the thing that we call I. Yeah. So so it seems like, our consciousness, the thing that we call I, is on this edge between the physical and the metaphysical somehow. But it appears as if, even though it's still energy, these computers, it still appears as if what we're creating slowly now is another stage where the knowledge that we produce on this edge between physical and metaphysical, there's now something that lives in an even more abstract sense, is able to produce new bodies of knowledge, but being less tied to the physical, even less. It will outlive us, li- likely, um, and it will function
Yes.
fundamentally quite differently from us. So it might be another stage, and this the point I want to make here is that it potentially, and I'm not sure what kind of form it will take, but it could potentially be the next stage in development where, we leave behind more of the physical, and perhaps then the consequence could be that we leave behind maybe our physical form, or maybe humanity as a whole as we know it right now, simply because the next stage of organizing information more efficiently, and kind of, yeah, the next stage of productivity effectively, because we are the most productive in the world right now, and the next stage of productivity will be that, and it will be purely digital, and we're not needed anymore, kind of Matrix, I guess, but maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So again, like, like I feel that you bring up this insane arguments the entire time, but there's so much in there, and then I unpack, or like I start with the first thing, and then we go like in another tangent,
Oh yeah.
which is totally fine. Like, this is our podcast. There's no real structure, so that's actually quite nice. But there's so much in here that I just let's start with a few things. So basically, the last part you just made, that I will start at the end right now, is like just transhumanism in essence, right? It's like, okay, we as humans, we can transcend the physical form. That's a restraint of ours, and we can go beyond that, and we can even, in a more techno-optimist, like Ray Kurzweil kind of idea, we can upload our minds into machines, and humanity will evolve further into a digital entity, something like that, right? So already there's a lot, also from a philosophical perspective, if that's even possible. Not sure if we should go in there right now. Okay, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
go for it.
Well, I think, it is a small
Yeah,
point to add. What I think is beautiful about this potential progression, this transhuman kind of thing, is that what makes us so special is because we have an emergent property in our brain, right? That's what I believe in. There's random, arbitrary creations in the physical form of our being, and it seems like finally
yeah,
we're getting to the point where we can create similar, random, emergent properties that are not purely physical anymore,
yes,
but they're purely digital. And that is very
yeah. But
interesting.
then you get directly to the hard problem of consciousness there, like, the quote unquote hard problem of consciousness. Like, what is it? Like, is your neurological manifestation, is that actual consciousness or not? Or is that just, now you get to more my kind of thing, like idealism, is it more a way that consciousness looks like, that it represents itself in the physical form? So that is, I think, the real question here. And this is, of course, extremely interesting when we talk about AI, because there is, I think, in the general collective now, the idea that consciousness can be created, that AGI can be created if we just put enough computational force together, that AGI will emerge. But I believe that, I agree with Bernardo Kastrup here, the founder of analytic idealism, that there is no sense, or there is no even hint for us to think that is the case, that is true, because what we're doing right now is we're just adding more computation. But the whole point is that we haven't solved the hard problem of consciousness yet. So we can go into a big rabbit hole here. I'm not sure if actually we can do that. It's quite fun. But what that will mean for our development of AI, because like I don't believe personally at this point, and I'm not sure if we can do it, that we can evolve ChatGPT, for example, into a real conscious entity. That is the question. And then just first you go for that, and we can you know we can unpack that.
Yeah, I haven't spent as much time, or I feel I haven't spent enough time thinking about what consciousness is. It is. It seems like we don't know, but I mean, we have kind of like a few definitions or approximations that you can
Mm.
choose to believe in. Um, I, I tend to not look at this as I I tend not to look at this as like development of consciousness per se, because it would, for me to say that consciousness as a thing that we don't understand, but it's this enigmatic thing that it would develop further, would is for me very very difficult, because it would have to imply that I have an opinion about what it really fundamentally is. I'm tempted to think, I believe, I guess I'm yeah I guess I'm more a materialist in the sense that I believe what I perceive empirically is at least the closest approximation of real truth that I can, consistently reproduce physically. I'm not saying it's fundamental truth, because I wouldn't know what it is, but I think it's worthwhile to consider that true, close approximation, and then taking that as an assumption, I just think about, okay, well, what would be the next progression? But whether it's real consciousness, I really don't know, because indeed consciousness could, I have this, just a hunch, and I think you have it too, that consciousness is more than that, than just computation. Even if it's emergent computation, I do feel somehow intuitively that it's more than that. But yeah, I feel that it's
You,
more
you
than consciousness, is fundamentally is more than just emergent computation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we go into this in this big consciousness rabbit hole now. I think it's important. I think it's also fun to highlight this, because it's of course hyper relevant for the AI discussion, and I think it's often overlooked, or it's just assumed that we create some AGI, and that we then, like, I think you also kind of do it in your argument, that we are becoming, in a way, in our physical form irrelevant, and that's when we have to transcend the physical. And it's just a matter of time, or a matter of technological development, for us to be able to do that. And that's the part I am not convinced about. So I'm not sure if that is the way in which humans and AI will mutually coexist, or merge, or form some kind of like biosynthetic symbiosis. I'm not sure if that is the way forward. I think it's like, right now, the common conception within, like, let's say, the intellectual elite of the collective, that's where we're going. We're gonna become robots, basically. We're gonna upload our thoughts, our complete memories, our entire experience into some sort of a machine, and we will live on as immortal beings, and we will conquer the galaxy, something like that. I think that's not too far fetched. Um,
Well,
I don't think that, but okay,
please go ahead. No, please finish.
no, 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 go for it, go
Okay.
for it, go
Okay.
for it.
Okay. So, well, I also had a thought, like, um, we are in a way, while we want it or not, we're already competing with AI, in the sense that I mean, I think the most obvious sign of this is immortality, right? So I think there's a chance. Look at it this way. Like, I think when it comes to competing with AI, I think we have a head start, quite a big one, actually, simply because we're already present in the physical world. And I do think that if we look at progressions, at some point we do a pretty good job of abstracting away the physical, because we have digital now, but fundamentally it's still prerequisite, and we still live in that area, and I think we have a lot of control there. And interestingly enough, I think AI will help us become immortal quite a lot faster than we initially thought it might be. We can use it to we're already using it actually for both drug production and for uh, protein folding. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing with AI already, and I think there's a chance that we um, we will merge with AI for sure because we're becoming more dependent on it. But I think there's also quite a chance that we'll become so insanely powerful ourselves, um, that it's not this black and white kind of thing. Will it either be AI or humans? Because we'll become immortal. We'll become, and I guess that is kind of this transhuman thing that will indeed merge. But I think what will come out, hopefully, but this is just like a hunch, is that it will still appreciate art and beauty. Because if we continue to expand as we are doing now, and it seems like becoming interplanetary will become even more likely now that we have this AI trend that is going quite fast. Yeah, I think there's a chance that we will, as long as we have enough space to play around, which we seem to be able to get physical space. I think we'll continue to expand, and I think that expansion, a big part of that is art and meaning, and it will probably become even more important. Um, and the moment we don't have any space anymore and things become constrained, then I think there might be a chance that we'll suffer. The future. This is just another random thought, but that's when I had recently. Do you think? A question to you then.
Mm.
Yeah, do you think we are competing with AI, or do you think AI is fundamentally a tool?
I think AI is fundamentally a tool. At this point, like I see AI as a very narrow part of the human experience, computational thinking or introvert thinking. I see it in that sense. It is getting extremely well developed. Right, it goes way beyond the sense of like what humans are capable of doing. And of course, you see this over the last decades. Like AI becoming dominant at every like thinking sport that humans are able to create, like chess and those kind of things. So in that sense, I think AI is fantastic because it enhances our capacity for that mode of being. Like the same a computer or a calculator enhances our mode to do math. I really see it in that specific sense. But I do not believe that AI is capable at this point, or even at all, but at this point, to experience what it is to be human. And that's where we get into a real fundamental question, because we already have, like right now, these ethical questions about AI. Who is responsible for the AI, and are we containing AIs within corporate private systems like Google, and those kind of questions. We even had like the Google employee last year that was fired because he publicly announced that Lambda was sentient. Those kind of things. So sorry, what was your initial question? I went on a bit of a tangent there.
It's a great tangent, and I think that's also the point of this, is that it's so unknown that tangents are the only way to explore it. But whether you think we're competing with it, and you did already answer it, competing with it,
Oh
or
yeah,
that whether it's just a tool, and it seems to be a tool.
yeah. It's a tool. Yeah, so I think it's a tool. I think it's a very powerful tool, perhaps the most powerful tool we have ever, as a species, created. So in that sense, I'm optimistic, but also pretty afraid. But I think that's just part of me being human. I feel fear. So that's interesting here to experience that. What do I feel fear about? Like, first of all, are we competing? Let's first go there. Competing in a way, like, yes, we're competing on the things that we do in that specific areas, where we use tools for. So we are competing there with AI, or we're not basically competing, but we're competing in so forth as, if I want to acquire a certain job, that an AI can also do that job. So in that sense, I'm competing for that. Because if I do a job, I'm basically the tool for that job. So I become a tool. I think AI is just a tool, but as humans, we are more. So we are not competing in the sense of being a human or being conscious. That I don't think.
Hmm, hmm.
Um, I did have some kind of like yeah internal revelation, because when first the Mid Journey AI, to create art, like I've been using that thing like crazy, because it's just so fascinating to me, like that we can, with specific prompts, you can create an art piece. It boggles my mind. Um, I felt a some sort of existential crisis because I was like, what the fuck, like if AI can do this. I always, I like to draw a little bit and like to create some stuff. And I always thought like maybe one day later, when all this like startup thingy is over, I'm gonna become an artist or I'm just gonna draw more, that kind of thing. And I felt like, whoa, but hang on, AI can already do this now a million times better than I will ever be able to do that, right? So there was like this some kind of existential crisis in there, and it really made me depressed for a few weeks. I was like, wow, man, like what is left for me as a human? Like if like the essence, like we discussed earlier, like if that is gone. But it also then later on it freed me in a way. I don't want to say I deified the AI, but it was like I can never reach a certain level anymore. That level is beyond my grasp. But that's basically what God is, right? It's beyond my grasp. So that also freaked me like, but now I can play freely again. Like it doesn't matter what I can play freely. Like I'm not gonna beat that anyway. You know what I mean? It was a very interesting psychological move that I made there. But yeah, but yeah, just that's kind of like how I'm in this whole AI and are we competing? Does have meaning? How I'm thinking about that right now. But this is all like very fresh, of course, and I'm not sure like how this will develop over the next few years. But at this point, I'm quite optimistic. Maybe it's foolish, but I'm quite optimistic.
Yeah. You said something quite interesting there, and I think that really highlights a beautiful part. Um, we are still we're still able to play, and that is actually, I think, a really important and a very important part of human existence, by which we learn and develop, um, is play. And indeed, leaving more work up to AI, and acknowledging that certain tasks it can do better than us. And that's exactly, I think, a really good point to maybe end this podcast with, and a really important message is that we will see job replacements, and we will see the necessity of acknowledging that we are not better at everything anymore. But at the same time, it actually allows us to play more with tools, because as you say, it's still another tool. And if we stop thinking about ourselves as a tool, or using ourselves as a tool, we can actually play much more. And that's where creation comes from. And the beauty is that we don't know where AI is going to head, but by us playing with AI, we also don't know what we are going to be able to create, which would create other futures that we don't imagine. So the optionality might actually be a lot higher because we can still play with it, and we should.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
agreed. I
I
think
think
that is a good point.
we also a more positive one, less of like, oh, human civilization is at the end and we are going to die and AI is going to replace us. More like, no, we can play a little bit with the fact that we have a new tool that seems to be a lot better, at a lot of things, but we also don't know what we are going to create with it. Also, obviously we don't know what AI is going to be, but we can create all kinds of new concepts and structures that we have no idea of. We have spoken for already an hour. I think there was a couple of things. I think this episode included a lot of new prompts for us, not for ChatGPT, and a lot of new prompts for us to think
Yeah, yeah.
about, that we can maybe zoom in on in another episode. Consciousness, I think, is a very interesting one that I would like to think about more, and I think I need some time as well to process some of the things that we discussed.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said in the beginning, it's probably a bit of a random episode. I wanted to also go to like, okay, how are you using AI now in your second brain and in your PKM systems, those kind of things.
Yeah,
Um, Perhaps we can discuss that later as well. Like I think that might be good as well. Yeah. What do you think about that?
it's a great idea. I think there's, what I discovered in this episode, because I had the same intention as you to discuss second brain. I think there's, so much to discuss regarding this, and I think it actually ties into second braining as well. Because to me, second braining is augmenting my intelligence, and obviously, note-taking
Yeah,
tools and systems do that. But AI, in combination with those things, is much more powerful. Now that we've discussed our kind of philosophical perspective of what AI is, we can also discuss how we want to use it to optimize our own, productivity, and play around with it, I guess, to augment our own intelligence. And I'd like to
cool.
zoom in on that, a lot. Yeah.
I agree. Awesome. Okay, so
Yeah,
this
thanks
is
a lot,
AI
man.
part one, and we can do part two and three later.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is just a start. I just wanted to say thank you because it was a really interesting conversation and a lot of prompts for new thoughts. So enough food for thought for sure.
Yeah, likewise. I was interrupting you, I think, the last few minutes because we get a little few hiccups. So I think it's also for that reason a good reason to end and to do a part two soon. But thank
Yep.
you, man. Yeah, I learned a lot as well from you. I think this is a very good intro to see where our basic fundamentals lie within the whole AI area. And yeah, from here on, the journey is just beginning. So I think this is a great point to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's continue the exploration in other episodes. Talk to you later, man.